Today in the show, in celebration of the recent release of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, a movie I enjoyed quite a bit, we're going back to the beginnings of Disney and their relationship with Indiana Jones. That brings us to the Indiana Jones Epic Stunt Spectacular, still being performed to this very day at Disney's Hollywood Studios. And joining me for this episode is Kevin Brassard, who was one of the first stunt performers to play Indiana Jones in the Stunt Spectacular. And get this, you can still see him in the show today. The Indiana Jones Epic Stunt Spectacular opened several months after the opening of Disney-MGM Studios on August 25th, 1989, and it's been thrilling guests ever since. Listen as Kevin shares his memories of the first performance, what it was like being beaten by a giant boulder, his favorite moment in the show, and some other opportunities Kevin has had with Disney, including meeting Indiana Jones himself, Harrison Ford, on the red carpet at the world premiere of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Now, put on your fedora and grab your whip. It's time to discuss all things Indiana Jones Epic Stunt Spectacular.
Prepare for some insight. You've tuned in to an exclusive DCTC interview.
Bum-ba-dum-bum, Kevin, welcome to Disney Coast to Coast. Are you sick of that song yet?
Oh my gosh, no, I never will be. Follows me. It's on my phone. It follows me around everywhere. I love it.
I love it so much too. And I'm so excited to have you here to talk about the Indiana Jones Epic Stunt Spectacular. We've talked very briefly. You know, I am a huge fan of this show, a super Disney-MGM Studios nerd, and you are a day one cast member with this show and the only remaining cast member still in the show. Welcome.
You're making me sound like a crypt keeper.
No. I am so impressed. I can't even tell you. I think it's phenomenal. And yeah.
Thank you for that hearty welcome, Jeff. Yeah, I'm excited to be here. I really am.
Excellent. Now, before Indiana Jones, you actually were working for Disney already and had some other positions with them. What kind of led up to Indiana Jones for you?
So I was originally hired for the Hoop-de-Doo Review, which is a 2-hour dinner show, and it's a hootin' good time with fried chicken and all the works, with 6 characters that are singing and dancing on stage. It's a dinner show, and it was just fantastic, and I absolutely loved it. It's actually where I met my wife, and we were dance partners there together.
And I mean, that show's still running strong as well. So basically, if you want a show to do well, put Kevin in it, and it'll have a nice long history.
I don't know about that, but thank you.
So, I mean, I gotta know. Obviously, Indiana Jones has become a huge part of your life, but before this, were you a fan of the character and the franchise, or?
Absolutely, I was always. So there are two. There's a lot of moments in my life that I remember, but there are 2 major moments that I remember that my mom and dad both did for me. One was my mom took me to, when I was very little, to The Sound of Music. And that started my love of music. And then my dad took me to Indiana Jones. And this was a big thing for me because I am the last of 7 children. And I got to go all alone with my dad. And it was such a wonderful, wonderful moment. I will never forget that boulder coming out of that screen. It seemed like it wasn't 3D back then, but it sure felt like it to me.
That's amazing. So you were a fan of this, and I'm curious, how did the job come about for you? Was this like an open call? Were they even saying it was Indiana Jones, or was it kind of secretive? What was going on?
Not at all. It was extremely secretive. Disney knew that they wanted to have a stunt show at the up-and-coming MGM Studios, and this was one of the best kept secrets on Disney property. So I was working at the Hoop-de-Doo, and I got a call from casting asking if I'd like to audition for an action character named Jack. And I was like, yes, sure, why not? And I had the audition. I thought it went well, and then I went away and I didn't hear anything. And then 3 months later, I got another call from casting asking if I'd like to be Indiana Jones. And I said, I didn't audition for that. And they said, yes, you did. You just didn't know it. And then from that point on, the original cast went into a 9-month training period or process with 3 of the best stuntmen in the business. This was absolutely unheard of. We were being paid to learn how to become stuntmen and women. And we were taught by Glenn Randall, Larry Holt, Bob Yerkes, 3 of the foremost stuntmen in the business at that time.
It's kind of crazy because like it sounds like none of you had any stunt experience, really.
There were circus performers. There were stuntmen. Actually, there was one of the giants was actually at the time being a stunt double for Superboy, I believe. So he was in film, and he stayed with the show for a long time as well.
Okay, but you were a dancer. You didn't have.
I was I was a singer, dancer, actor at that time, which is one of the reasons I believe that I did get hired, because when I moved like Harrison, right? So when it came to choreography, and especially the first scene, the pungees that are set in the ground are actually set to my footsteps.
Oh.
So you could say that everybody I train now in the role is walking in my footsteps.
That's what you're talking about, the spikes that come shooting up that you have to avoid.
Correct.
Wow. That's so funny. So what was the audition process like? If you were told you're going in for this action character named Jack, but like, was it stunt work in the audition?
Not at all. It was really just a reading. They wanted to hear the voice, inflections, and just what I could bring, or what we all could bring to it. Oh, and man, that script was something.
You said 9 months of rehearsal. So like when you went in, were you all kind of developing the show together, or was there like a strong script in place and just took 9 months to learn?
We were absolutely developing the script, our skills. We had the stuntmen to teach us how to become stuntmen and women. We also had wonderful acting instructor. Her name was Barbara Epstein, and she is still a dear friend to this day. So we were learning how to hone our skills as actors, and the high falls were taking place on makeshift scaffolding that was supposed to be the buildings. And this was all being done in a warehouse in Florida in the summer, and it was hot.
Okay, so at this point, when you're rehearsing, was it still a secret? Because so a lot of people might think that the Stunt Spectacular opened with Disney-MGM Studios. It actually came along several months later in August of that same year, and the park opened in May. So, like, I can't remember, was the giant Indiana Jones signage in the park for the opening already, or was it a secret that an Indiana Jones show was coming?
It was still a secret for just a pinch, because everything was not ready. So our stage was almost ready, and we were at a point where we really needed to be on that stage because we had done all we could at the warehouse. So from that point, once we reached that point in our skills and everything else, we were in a goldfish bowl pretty much. So we would go out, we'd sit in the stands. Guests were allowed to come in, but they were told, this is going to be an action show, and as time went on, it's like, this is going to be an Indiana Jones epic stunt spectacular.
That's amazing. So, I mean, you guys were kind of working in secret there for a while, and then brought into the park, but still just rehearsing. And then eventually the show opens. But I am curious, like, when you found out, I know you knew you were going for an action role, but when you found out, hey, it's Indiana Jones and it's very much a stunt show, were you interested in doing stunts, or did that kind of scare you?
Absolutely, I was interested.
Okay.
Especially because of Glenn Randall. He just became a father figure to me, and I wanted nothing more than to please this man and to prove to him that he made the right choice, that I was one of the 3 guys that could make him proud, and that we all wanted to just make him proud.
That's awesome. Now, I'm going to assume that people listening to this have probably seen the show in person or on YouTube or something. You know, assuming people know the show, is there a favorite moment or scene that you really enjoyed performing?
Rope drop.
Oh, really?
Oh my gosh, yes. It's absolutely the best ride in the park.
So the very first moment of the show where Indy falls from the ceiling down into the cavern there. Wow, that's
Correct.
the one that would scare me the most.
Oh, it's such a blast though. And actually we figured out recently that there have been more people who have gone into outer space than have been lucky enough to perform that rope drop. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, I can't imagine doing that sort of stuff for the first time. I'm sure you're rigged up and made sure that, you know, it's safe, but like in the show, it's pretty much, it's a free fall, right?
It is for just a moment, and then the sled and the rope that you're attached to catch up to where you are and then stop you. But it stops you with 3 Gs. So 3 Gs on your body every day, 5 days a week. And back in the beginning, we did, if you were doing the A shift, you had 6 shows, and if you were the principal, you did 4 of those 6 shows as Indy. And then you prayed that the other Indy that was there that day didn't get hurt in the last 2 shows, or else you'd have to go back in.
Wow. So, I mean, take me back to the moment of the first time you did the drop with an audience in front of you. Do you remember that moment?
Oh, of course I do. It was spectacular. It was because the roar of that crowd was just unlike anything that I had personally experienced before. Absolutely incredible. And I was an absolute wreck before I jumped out of that catwalk. I hopefully didn't let anybody know it, but I was.
Well, one of the cool things about it is the fact that like it's the start of the show, but it's really kind of comes out of nowhere. Like there, as far as I remember, there's no like, ladies and gentlemen, the show's about to begin. Like there's no announcement. It's just like the music kind of slowly creeps in and the fall happens. So like it's unexpected.
It is. There's this undulating music that happens, and out of nowhere, Indy just comes out of the ceiling. So yeah, it takes them by surprise. And what's funny now is just, you know, you get to look into the audience as I play the role of the director now, and I get to watch everybody kind of rear back when Indy makes his appearance.
That's awesome.
It's great.
I mean, honestly, I thought the thing you would say would be the big boulder because that's just so iconic. But I'm curious, do you have any stories about that boulder?
Oh my gosh. So yes. So the boulder really does weigh over 400 pounds. In our show, we have 2 technicians who are pushing it back, and they make it look like it doesn't weigh a whole lot. But it's very much like your car. You know, you can push your car. If you got stuck on the road, you could push your car out of the way, right? And your car weighs thousands of pounds, right? So the boulder really does weigh over 400, and it will hurt you. I am living proof. One day early in that first year, I was trying to get closer and closer to the boulder and almost trying to stop it as well. It grabbed my jacket and it would not let go. And it took me down, dislocated my shoulder, and I stood up, and my left shoulder was somewhere way behind me. And I didn't even know it, but I knew it when I stood up because the audience in front of me went, this huge gasp, like, where's the guy's shoulder?
Oh, no.
And I looked and I'm like, oh, that's not good. So I looked down at my understudy and I said, go get dressed. I finished that part of the show, and then I got myself off stage before I passed out.
Oh my God. All right. So the boulder is not your friend, but I gotta.
Oh, it is. No, it is now. But it needed to teach me a lesson that day, and lesson learned.
Yeah. I mean, listen, it's such an iconic part of the film that it's like a stunt show based on Raiders of the Lost Ark has to have that moment, but it's also kind of, it's fun to see how they recreated that scene that is like such like a tight cavernous scene in the film into this huge open stage space. And I also love the moment that opening scene is done and they rip the set piece apart and you're like, oh my gosh, there's so much more behind this. And like, it just keeps growing. Like,
absolutely.
it's such a fun show. I love it.
I do too.
So as I said, the show did open August 25th, 1989. And up to that point, you'd been rehearsing for 9 months. Do you have any specific memories from that day? I guess you talked about, dropping in with the rope, but any other that must have been so exciting to finally open.
It absolutely was. It was like everything was just coming to a head, and George Lucas was going to be there. Michael Eisner was going to be there. And when they told me that I was going to be the indie who was lucky enough to be able to perform that first scene, I was floored, absolutely floored, because I really thought it was going to be my buddy Larry, but it turned out to be me. And then when I dropped in and after I finished the entire scene, George Lucas and Michael Eisner are running out on stage, and I'm looking down at them going, oh my gosh, I can't talk to you. Yeah, I was pretty choked up.
I was going to ask if you have any specific Michael Eisner memories or moments. I'm a huge Eisner fan. And obviously, Disney-MGM Studios was his baby, right? That was the first park that he opened.
It really was.
Yeah. So you were, you opened a bit later, but were you there for the grand opening of Disney-MGM Studios and all of that kind of fun stuff and seeing the park open and being like, hey, we got something else coming?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah, we were there, got to, on our breaks, go around the park. It was quite the to-do. I did want to say with Michael Eisner, I had a couple of opportunities to, I don't want to say work with him, but work for him when the cruise line came around and the shows were being formed. I was also lucky enough to be one of the cast members who got to fly out to California and pitch the entire music score. So that was a lot of fun too.
Wow. So I know that you had, obviously you've been with the Stunt Spectacular for a long time, but you did come and go a little bit. You went to Tokyo for a bit, I believe, at one point, right?
I did.
Talk to me a bit about I'm curious more about this cruise line thing, but basically anything else that you've done outside of Indy.
I've done a lot. I have to tell you, if there is one thing that I want your audience to know is that if you are looking for a job and you've got talent, this company will push you and train you to do more things than you ever thought that you could possibly do. I have done everything that I ever wanted to do. I feel like the luckiest performer on property. And there are others who have had just as amazing luck as I have. But yeah, it's a great place to work. I love it.
So what did you do with Tokyo?
So with Tokyo, my wife and I were lucky enough to go together. This was back when they would send married couples, but they weren't keen on it because the married couples got to have their own house. So we were taking up, 2 bedrooms that weren't being used. But yeah, we had our own house in Tokyo. We went there for 9 months. My wife got to do One Man's Dream, and I did Swing and Sing and the Parade. There again, I became a tapper in Japan, and I was taught by the world famous Nakano brothers. So that, again, was just an amazing tutorial.
Did you know at the time that, hey, like I'm going to end up back at Indiana Jones, or was this like a possible,
Yes.
Okay.
Disney told me before I left that we're going to take you out of this for 9 months, but you're going to come back and go right back into it.
Wow. Well, that's like such a kind of crazy opportunity.
It truly was. And both financially and, as an actor, again, and as a performer, I learned a whole new set of skills. So
yeah,
it
wild.
was amazing.
And say again what you were doing with the cruise. I didn't quite understand exactly what they had you
with
do.
the cruise line, everything was being, very much like Indiana Jones. There was a script. And with the cruise line, there were ideas.
This was for one of the stage shows?
This was for all of the stage shows.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Okay.
So all of the music, all of the shows were being just tried out. Let's see if this works. And how is this song going to go into this song? And yeah, so all of that was being done. And That was a good long period too. I want to say that was at least a couple months before we went out to Los Angeles.
Huh. Wow. So that's pretty. Wow. You've had some like crazy experiences with
Oh
Disney.
my gosh, I absolutely have. I've also been Ace Ventura.
Oh gosh, back in the day where Disney. So this is something I never saw in person. I've seen minimal video of it, but yes, at one point on the streets of America, they did like an Ace Ventura show, and so you played Ace Ventura.
Yes, and in the early days of Ace Ventura, he had his taxi cab, and Ace would. This was crazy. It was on New York Street, and Ace would. His entrance to the stage was him going down the New York Street about 30 miles an hour with people lined up on both sides and no stanchions. I couldn't believe that, but no stanchions were there. And then he'd crash into trash cans and get out and go, "How you doing?" It was crazy.
Oh man, Disney-MGM Studios was the Wild West. I'll tell you, there were some special things going on.
Awesome.
My favorite little area was another thing that opened a little bit after the park opened was the Honey I Shrunk the Kids movie set adventure playground. I still miss it. I miss it to this day. But speaking of such cool things you've gotten to do, now the Indiana Jones Stunt Spectacular, having existed for as long as it has, had some pretty cool opportunities in and of itself, including the Muppets performing on that stage, New Kids on the Block performing on that stage, or at least one of them, I think Donnie. And then, a fun little episode of Full House, which you have a little relationship with, don't you?
Again, so lucky. I've been so blessed. Yes, I got to meet the entire cast of Full House and perform scene one, of which one of the characters in the cast of Full House, I was his stunt double because the other character was dreaming about him. And I think his character's name was Steve. And so Steve was supposed to be in scene one and going through the punjies and then running from the boulder. And then I stand up and it's me with a mullet.
Are you in any of the marketing videos? I know there's been some great marketing videos for that show through the years. Are you in any of those?
So years and years ago, I used to be in the guy that was running from the boulder.
Yeah.
That was me.
Oh.
And that was actually a great story too, because that happened when we were still at the warehouse.
Mm.
And Disney came to Glenn Randall and said, "All right, so we want to shoot this commercial. It's going to be a SAG commercial. So whoever, whichever you guys gets to do this they're going to make a little bit of money on this." And Glenn was amazing. He goes, "You know what? It should be one of the indies." And you know what? Disney's came back to him and said, "Well, we don't want it to be one of them. We'd rather it be you or Bob or Larry that's going to run from the boulder." Because this was going to be, the whole stage wasn't even ready yet.
Yeah.
So it happened in the parking lot of the MGM Studios. There was a ramp and the boulder. And then Glenn went back to Disney and said, "You know what? I don't feel like running today." And Bob, Larry, what about you? You feel like running today? "No, we don't feel like running today." So they were on our side, and Glenn picked me to run from the boulder. Again, my lucky horseshoe. And I got to do it. And what Disney did was actually they fired me for one day so that I wasn't a Disney employee, and I got my SAG scale.
Did it make you a SAG actor, or were you already
I was already a member of the wonderful Screen Actors Guild Union, and so I was lucky enough there.
That's so wild. Now, the show has seen some updates through the years. I'd like to talk a little bit about these, like what prompted them, what kind of changes have we seen, how do you get notice of these changes? Is it something they talk to you guys about, or is it just one day, hey, we're cutting 5 minutes?
The changes that have occurred over the years have been because of different show directors that come and go. And they all wanted to leave their mark on it or change it just a little bit, maybe update it sometimes. But I will tell you that with every show director, it has always gone back to pretty much the solid base that Glenn Randall established 34 years ago. There might be one or two changes in there, and they're good. They're good changes, but yeah, it always goes back to Glenn.
One of the things that kind of surprises me about it, and I'm so happy this hasn't been changed, but it does surprise me a little bit, is simply the fact that, Disney-MGM Studios, when it opened, was a park about making movies, making entertainment, and it has definitely
Right.
skewed in a different direction. But the Stunt Spectacular is still about movie making. You guys are still making a fake movie every performance, and there's roles like director, producer, stuff like that. And I'm so happy that that's never changed, but I don't know.
Me too.
Have you ever heard, I don't know, like even with Indiana Jones 5 coming out, was there ever any talk or buzz that you heard about? Like, hey, the show's going to get a nice update because of this.
Yes, actually, there was talk of our show being updated. There is a scene in Indy 5 with, I think they're called Tut-Tuts. I'm not sure on what the actual official name of that is, but they're the small vehicles that they use. And there was talk of trying to get them into our show, but in order for that to happen, there would have been just way too much downtime, and tracks would have had to have been laid in the show. So it just never happened.
Is there a secret of the show that like not many people know about that maybe you can reveal? Is there a little trickery or anything that like listeners might be like, oh, wow, I've seen this show 12 times and I never knew that?
Yeah, well, I think I could tell you about Marion. That's not that big of a secret. Marion gets thrown into the back of the truck, and then the truck goes around the marketplace building and flips over, and you hear Marion scream. Well, if you think she's in the truck, she's not. She's actually gotten out behind the building. There is another truck that takes over right when the real truck comes around, and she has what we call a dog run, where she has to crouch down and get to the front of the stage now, and she comes out of a box. But with the fire extinguishers, trying to put out the fire on the truck, you never really see that door open.
Is that still in the show?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Because last time I saw it, it didn't happen.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, and I was just like thinking to myself, listen, I'd seen it many times. It was fine. I was just like, oh God, I hope it's still in the show. Like it is,
but unfortunately, you have to understand our show is 34 years old.
Yeah.
So the technology is also 34 years old. So things break, and trying to get maybe the equipment, to repair it is not readily available.
But also weather really affects your show, and we all know weather in Orlando is a nightmare. And it's funny because like the audience and scene 1 is under some nice protection, but like beyond that, you all are out in the elements, and that can, I would assume there must be different levels of like, hey, we got to cancel the show to we need to make some adjustments.
Absolutely. We have so many contingencies in our show. There are different levels of lightning or rain or equipment that's just not working, but we will always find a way to give the audience as much as we possibly can, because we don't want them leaving unhappy. And trust me, if there's one thing I can tell you, we want to do the show as much as they want to see it. We absolutely love it.
Yeah, it's God, it still packs the house. It's kind of
It does.
wild.
And there's 2,000 seats, right? And then there's pretty much standing room only every day.
Have you had any like special guests that you really remember? Like, did Michael Jackson ever come see it or something like that?
Yes, actually.
Oh, yeah?
Actually, yes. Michael Jackson did come and see it. Harrison Ford, of course, did come and see it.
Oh.
I was not there that day, unfortunately, but the indie that he did get to see was Jeff Robinson, and he could not have seen a better indie. Jeff moved exactly like Harrison Ford did. So I know that, or I'm sure that Harrison Ford was really happy with what he saw that day.
It's so funny. I have a...
Oh, Princess Di. Princess Di.
Oh, wow. Okay. So yeah, I'm sure way more than that even, but you know what? So the volunteers are not part of the show anymore, right?
No,
okay.
They're not, but we're hoping one day to get them back.
What's so funny is, so for the longest time, I was just like too shy as a kid to do anything like that. And then I made a decision. I was like, I'm going to do it. Like, I've seen this show so many times. One of these times I'm going to do it. And then of course, pandemic changed a lot of things. But by the time I decided I'm going to do it, I'm like, I screwed myself. I'm too late. But hopefully one day I want to stand on that stage. It's such a fun stage.
I got to tell you, that was like for my son, who grew up watching the show, his whole goal in life was to turn 18 and become an extra on our set. And when he turned 18, he did it as many times as he possibly could.
That's so funny. So do your kids think it's cool that you're like Indiana Jones?
Yeah, my kids are like, yeah, my dad's Indiana Jones. No, I got to tell you, growing up with 3 kids, especially in when they were younger in elementary school days, and it was bring your parent to school. I was the cool parent, I have to say, because I wore the full costume. I brought the whip. I would usually whip the teacher, so the kids loved that. I would I don't mean whip the teacher. I would wrap the whip around the teacher. So yeah.
Man, that's so funny. But yeah, I can imagine that must be a pretty cool, job for dad to have. Like, yeah, plus, I mean, you get full access to Walt Disney World, right? Absolutely. It's a pretty sweet thing for a kid. So yeah, so the pandemic hits and of course everything shuts down for a while. And, live entertainment is like the last thing to come back. And, Indiana Jones Epic Stunt Spectacular has a lot of years on it. Was there the fear of it's such a staple of the park, but we also kind of know that means nothing sometimes. But I don't know, was there conversation of this might not return or what was going on?
Oh, absolutely. No, absolutely. I'm sure that there were talks even before COVID hit with when LMA was there. I know that we were on the chopping block at one point because it was either LMA or Indiana Jones.
And when you say LMA, you mean Lights, Motors, Action, Extreme Stunt Show, which, I mean, you guys outlived, which is insane because it came so many years after you.
I know.
I can imagine that's a really expensive show to produce with the cars.
It absolutely was. The tires alone in that show were really expensive.
And then they take those tires and they melt them down and make new giant boulders for you to run away from, right?
That's exactly what they did.
But yeah, no, seriously. I mean, that was of the 2 stunt shows, that was the new one. And you guys have outlived that one. But it's interesting to hear that there is
absolutely
that there was talk, of Indy possibly being in danger. I mean, where does it stand these days? Do you know? Like it's still filling the house.
We're good. Yeah, we're good right now. They're looking at just ways to keep us going and not let it die, really.
Yeah. God, it's so...
I mean, especially with the franchise being as hot as it is right now. And, Walt Disney World, they own the rights to the silhouette of Indiana Jones. I mean, so yeah, they're not about to let it go yet.
Yeah, and I love that little area of the park, the little Echo Lake area where, it's just really kind of one of the few untouched areas of that park. And I hate to sound like that person who's like, oh, change is bad. But like, I have just such a soft spot for that park that I love hanging out in that area and seeing the giant silhouette of Indy or, the giant painting of Indiana Jones overlooking the lake.
Absolutely. I do too. Have you ever gone through the queue line?
Oh, yeah. I vividly remember. I went in 1990. That was my first time at Disney. I think it was Thanksgiving of 1990 was my first visit to Disney-MGM Studios. And I vividly remember waiting in that queue to be let into the show. And I think about it.
They did such a good job.
Yeah, they really did.
Such a good job of theming just a queue line for people, Yeah, they did an amazing job.
Yeah. Yeah, so I am kind of curious. Do you own a fedora in real life?
You want me to get it? Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Listen, I don't know if it's hey, I'm leaving work.
I absolutely do.
Let's take off the uniform after work and get into the street clothes. But you seem to really embrace this character and love it.
I absolutely do. I believe Harrison was quoted to say, "That damn music follows me wherever I go,"
Yeah.
But it does. It really does. But I love it. I think he does too.
Speaking of Harrison Ford, you recently met him as you were invited to the world premiere of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny.
Oh my gosh, this was right up there with the birth of my children. This surprise came out of nowhere, and I had finished my third show. My proprietor is coming on stage as I'm leaving, and she's telling me to go back on stage. And I said, "Oh, okay." And then around the Mayan temple came Rayvon, who is our Disney ambassador. And then the phone cameras came around, and I'm like, what is going on? And that's when he announced to me that I, plus one, was being flown out to Hollywood for the Hollywood premiere of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, and that I'd be on the red carpet, and that we'd see the movie, and it just unbelievable. And having experienced it now, the one thing that I am determined to find out is, who is that person? I want to know who that person is that said, hey, you know what we should do? We should fly Kevin Brassard and someone out to Hollywood, California for this, because I just want to thank them from the very top of my heart, because the top is bigger, and because it meant so much to me. I didn't know what was going to happen that day. And when we were escorted onto the red carpet, I thought, oh my gosh, this is amazing. There's so many stars all around me. Mario Lopez walked right by me. I could have shoulder checked him. Derek Huff was there. I leaned over and I'm like, I love your work. He goes, I love your work. I saw you on the red carpet twirling the girl around. And I'm like, yeah. It was amazing. And then seeing Steven Spielberg, George Lucas, but when the moment, and talking to the Hollywood Reporter was just unbelievable. And then when the moment came where this woman that I didn't know grabbed my hand and said, come with me. And I went with her, and she goes, Kevin Brassard, Harrison Ford. And I'm like, hello, Mr. Ford. It was beyond belief. And he was so kind and so giving of his time, and really interested in what I had to say, and what Michelle Waitman, who went with me, what she had to say. He was totally engaged in us. It wasn't like, oh, I got to do this thing, He genuinely, I felt anyways, he genuinely was happy to meet us, and just as excited as we were to meet him. He's such a great man. I have so much respect for him.
That's so cool. That's, like you said, that's awesome that somebody thought of that and was like, let's do this. And this is, it's obviously part of a media thing. Like this is a cool moment to use as marketing, but like, just for you, that's just like, heck yeah, I'll take
it. It wasn't
part.
marketing for me.
No.
I mean, that may have been what it was, but truly for me, it was Disney making yet another dream of mine come true, to meet the man that I portrayed for the past 34 years. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm crying.
Now, did you tell Harrison what you did, or was he kind of forewarned? Like, hey, this I believe he had been told who we were. Okay.
So he knew who he was talking to.
Okay.
Yeah.
So obviously the stunt show is very successful, but it has never been replicated. And that's kind of a rarity in the world of Disney. Usually when something is a success, I mean, they have the Walt Disney Studios Park over at in Disneyland Paris. Like, show's never been replicated. That's even more of a reason, in my opinion, for it to stick around Disney's Hollywood Studios for as long as it can.
I agree. I thought sure that with the opening of Disneyland Paris, that it would be replicated over there. I mean, Lights, Motors, Action was over there, and we brought it here. So I thought, sure, that might happen with Indy, but it truly never did. And it's amazing. It's just amazing that we are still here. We're still going strong. Yeah, and we haven't been copied yet.
How long was your original contract for the show?
A year.
Okay.
Any Disney cast member that is in the entertainment portion of Walt Disney World, you are offered a 1-year contract. So I have been fortunate enough to have 36 1-year contracts.
And do you know if the show was built to run for a certain length of time? I remember like Fantasmic at Disneyland was built to run for 5 years or 6 years, something like that.
Same.
Okay.
That's the same with us. I believe we were slated to be a 5-year show.
Wow.
And that was it.
And yet it still keeps
going. We just kept on going.
That's amazing.
I remember Glenn Randall coming back one time to visit about probably 9 or 10 years, not really expecting to see what he had left behind, because I think he assumed it was going to change a little bit. And then when I came out as Indy, but he said, "Holy, you're still here? God, you got more patience than Job."
I guess that brings up a good point. Like, what do you do? I know you're not exactly playing Indiana anymore, and we'll get to that in a second, but that was only fairly recently that you transitioned to a different role. So for, 30 plus years playing Indiana Jones 5 days a week with, some breaks in between, how did you keep it fresh for yourself? I mean, how did you not get sick of that music and not get sick of putting on that hat?
So I have a picture actually that I carried around with me. Now it's on my phone. It used to be in my wallet. And it was just the backside of a father and his son. And the father has his arm around the son and he's pointing out onto our stage. And where he's pointing to is right at Indy. And that picture to me, it spoke volumes. When you're a dad and you have a kid, you always want to be your kid's hero. But to me, that picture, that picture was that father's, he wanted his son at that moment to look at Indy as his hero. And for a father to give that up, even just for a moment, it just speaks volumes to my heart. So to keep it fresh, I had that picture, but I also knew that people save their life savings sometimes to come to Walt Disney World. Not everyone, has a high-paying job and they have to save their money. And I was probably I was one of those people who had to save their money to do anything. I had 3 kids and it wasn't easy, but we made it work. And I was lucky enough to get into Walt Disney World for free, but there's those families that did not. And plus they had airfares and they had to, get here and then stay here and then go back home. And I just never lost sight that these people are paying a lot of money to come and see great entertainment. And I couldn't not give that to them. And I think that was the mindset with everyone at Indiana Jones Epic Stunt Spectacular, because we are such a close-knit family, the entire cast. I mean, we've been through so much together. And like, for example, one of the Marions, Michelle Waitman, she has twin boys and I am the godfather to those twin boys. But I'm not the only one. We are all just so incredibly close. Like we've had indies who have married Marions. We have a history of one of our indies who is now in most of the Marvel films, right? His son grew up watching him do Indiana Jones. And then that was his goal in life, was to become Indiana Jones. And he is now in our show as Indiana Jones.
That's unbelievable. I mean, this show,
it's such a legacy.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely two generations of people. Like I was just thinking that when you were talking about the photo of the dad with the arm around the kid, I don't know how long ago that photo was taken, but like,
it's old.
Yeah. I mean, that kid could be a father now. You know what I mean? Like,
oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Which is really, really wild.
Sure is.
So a couple years ago, you've transitioned away from the role of Indiana Jones and you've taken on several others, but you also train Indiana. So I'd love to hear more about that.
I'm so fortunate that Walt Disney World has still given me the gift of being able to train the new indies when they're coming in to learn our show. And I am happy to say that I trained them exactly how Glenn Randall trained me. So all the knowledge that Glenn gave to me, I am giving to them. And along with the experiences of having done the show and what can go wrong or what can go right. Yeah, it's quite a gift that I'm still able to do that. I would say I had a hard time giving up the role of Indy, but knowing that I was still going to be in the show and that I would still be able to train the new guys meant that I could still do the stunts because somebody's got to show them how to do it. Somebody's got to show you how to jump out a rope drop. You can't just do it. So I still get to do that, and I'm grateful for that. In fact, now there's a time where the rope drop has to be changed out. It reaches a certain number, and we have to put a new one in. So when that happens, all of the indies are like, I can't do it. Can you do it? No, I can't do it. Kevin, can you do it? Yeah, I can do it.
Be like the first to test it, you mean? The new...
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. They sound smart to me. I wouldn't want to be the first one to try it. That's hilarious.
Oh, no, it's completely safe. We have amazing technicians who take just fantastic care of us, and their goal is to make sure, and our goal too, is to make sure that everybody goes home at the end of the day the same way they came in. Everybody goes home safely.
And what roles are you performing now in the show?
So there are 3 roles for the actors to perform, which is the director, the assistant director, and the casting director. So I do all 3 of those roles as well.
Wow. Man, it just continues. I love it so much.
So do I. I think if there was something that I would like to do, I want to thank Walt Disney. I wish you were around that I could thank him, because what he envisioned for so many people, in my eyes, was beyond anything I ever thought I'd do. And I'm so grateful.
That's amazing.
So grateful to God, so grateful for all the blessings that I've gotten in my life. I'm so lucky. I really am. I have friends who tease me all the time that I have a horseshoe.
One of the other interesting things that has happened through the years of doing this show is it went from like a property that was licensed by Disney to now the Walt Disney Company owns Indiana Jones because they own Lucasfilm. Was there any sort of like, I don't know, it doesn't really affect the show at all, but I'm just curious if there was like a moment of like the crew and the cast being like, hey, like we're really part of the brand now.
Well, absolutely. And it made us feel, very solid in the fact that we weren't going anywhere. Because when that happened, it was like, oh, okay, we're definitely not going anywhere. Pretty sure it's going to be LMA.
Yeah, wow.
And unfortunately, it was for them.
Yeah.
I don't want to see anybody lose their job, that's for sure. But I'm glad it wasn't us.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was just that area of the park had to go through some. Listen, they got knocked out Residential Street, so they had it coming.
Right.
They had it coming.
Right. They took the Golden Girls house away.
I'll tell you. I mean, so you were there to see all that construction and stuff. I mean, gosh, I can't even imagine seeing those homes just bulldozed. I'm actually going through this right now. I live down the street from Warner Brothers, and they're currently demolishing the Warner Brothers Ranch, which has homes from, Bewitched and WandaVision and National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, bulldozed. They're being bulldozed right now. And I'm just like, it breaks my heart. And I felt that way about Residential Street as well.
It broke my heart when they did that as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's wrap things up with, I'm curious, and Indiana Jones cannot be your answer, something besides that. What is something from like original Disney-MGM Studios that you absolutely loved and terribly miss? And then like your favorite things that's at Disney's Hollywood Studios today that isn't Indiana Jones?
That isn't Indiana Jones?
That isn't Indiana Jones. We got to go a little beyond.
Okay, so let me start with that. I would have to say Rise of the Resistance is amazing, and I really enjoy that. So that would, besides Indiana Jones, which is my favorite, I would say Rise of the Resistance is right there. It's good. Yeah. And what do I miss from before? I would tell you, I miss that backstage tour with the tram. At one point, you got off the tram and you walked through the top of sound stages, and that was pretty cool. I mean, but that's all gone now, so I miss that.
Yeah, I really miss the Great Movie Ride, which of course included some Indiana Jones in it. So
yes, it did. It absolutely did.
yeah. So what an epic, epic stunt spectacular and an epic conversation with you. Thank you so much,
Jeff.
Kevin, for coming on the show. This was such a delight. And truly, I'm such a huge fan.
Thank you. It has been my absolute pleasure. And thank you so much for being such a great fan of the Indiana Jones Epic Stunt Spectacular. I'm hoping it lives on another 34 years.
Yeah, and I really hope the next time I go, I'm sure I saw you do it in the past. I don't know, obviously, which indies I saw, but I saw the show many, many, many times. But I want to come back and see you as director. So we're going to make that happen sometime soon.
You should go through your photos, Jeff.
I should. I should.
I'm sure you have photos of it.
I do. I'll send you some photos and see if I don't. It's pretty far distance between the actors and the audience. So I don't know how easily I can tell, but maybe if I send them your way, you'll be able to let me know.
I'll be able to tell.
Cool. That's amazing. Well, thank you so much, Kevin. This was a blast.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning into this episode. Don't miss any future episodes by subscribing and following Disney with a Z coast to coast on your favorite podcast app, where episodes are available 24/7. If you're a longtime listener of the show, thank you. And if you have the means, consider supporting the show over on Patreon. By joining Disney Coast to Coast's Patreon membership, you'll gain access to extra bonuses, including live stream Ask Me Anythings, unreleased episode, and more bonus content. Take a look at all that's available by clicking the Patreon link in this episode's description, and thank you for considering. Until next time, anything you need can be found in this episode's description. From additional information and links discussed in this episode found in the show notes, to the DCTC hotline where you can leave a voicemail and be heard on a future episode, contact info to reach me, access to the show's official website, some free gifts from me to you, and so much more. So be sure to check out this episode's description. Other than that, folks, have a magical day. Bye!